Well, good morning, students. Today we are going to be continuing our study of Aboriginal spirituality. Today's focus, we're going to be looking at practices, rituals, milestones, and more. I'm going to try and condense this lesson into a 10 to 15-minute lesson. So let's get started. So I'm going to start with Aboriginal rituals and rebirth. So modern day Aboriginals are undergoing a rebirth of traditional practices. And some students in the past have asked, well, why are practices being reborn or looked into and studied and followed even more closely? Well, over time, conversion and assimilation policies, along with disease, nearly wiped out Native North Americans and First Nations peoples and their culture. Globalization slash consumerism has also had a major impact on the cultural and religious practices of the Aboriginal and First Nations peoples. Also, willingness to relearn ancestral beliefs slash practices shows strength and pride in culture. From an assimilation standpoint, some of you have studied this in the past, but we look at residential school systems and a variety of different policies that were in place that forced First Nations and Aboriginal people to assimilate to North American standards of living, and oftentimes forced them to leave their rituals and their religious beliefs behind. So that's why in today we're seeing a rebirth, a following, a discovery of Aboriginal ritual belief system. So it's important to note here that although modern traditional practices are often cross-cultural within an Aboriginal community. I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the ritual practices and some of the religious practices of Aboriginal people. So one is the morning dance. It's a ritual and a celebration. So the morning dance, a little bit of information here. The Ojibwe perform the dance every spring, and it honors the tree of the universe, which is believed to have given life to all things. It involves a fasting and a cleanse. During the morning dance, elders drum slash lead dances around a selected tree. Dance runs from dawn to noon, and drummers signal dancers to touch the tree trunk as they pass by to give thanks. And essentially, you're giving thanks to the tree of the universe that gives all things. At midday, it's marked by a huge feast. The sun dance, further information here about our rituals and celebrations. The sun dance, the Great Plains Nation holds a festival over 8 to 16 days in the summer. The ceremony identifies the circle as an important symbol, the sun as giver of life. During the sun dance, people dance around a central cottonwood pole, which represents the tree of life. So this is a representation of this tree of life. People face the sun to show it respect and reverence. Wooden hooks are embedded into the chests of some dancers and are tethered to a pole. They pull back and flesh is torn. It's done as a sacrifice to the Creator because their body is all they can control. Now, in this sun dance ritual, it's believed that enduring pain will prevent others from suffering and experiencing things like famine, war, disease. Prayers are recited for all people during the dance, not just those people who are present. Moving on to the third celebration that we're going to be looking at today, and of course there's many different religious practices and celebrations, but I wanted to talk about the potlatch celebrations. Now, potlatch, or potlatches plural, are held to celebrate for many different reasons. A few common ones would be marriage, atonement, the naming of a child. Hosts hold a feast and give away material possessions. The more gifts you give away equals the more prestige or status that is gained. During these potlatch ceremonies, singing and dancing occurs, and it's really in honor of the Great Spirit. I added in a slide here. I wanted to show that some of these practices have actually been banned throughout our country's history and throughout history in North America. So the Sundance and the potlatch ceremonies were both banned in the 1800s. The Sundance was referred to as barbaric. Uh, it was oftentimes and by many people hated, and it kind of discriminated against for the powerful symbolism in the ceremony. The potlatch was made illegal in 1884, and people believed that it contributed to idleness, just sitting around and not contributing. And people claimed it was backwards and it was wasteful, giving away all of this stuff and these gifts. Later, it was reinstated in 1951. But as you can tell, that's over a century, over 130 years that this ceremony was forced to not be allowed to be practiced by Aboriginal peoples. So the sweat lodge ceremony was done to renew the soul. And a sweat lodge is actually, this is often practiced in a variety of different cultures around the world. It's just referred to in different ways, but it was done to renew the soul. It cleanses the physical and spiritual body. A shaman directs participants in the creation of a sauna-like structure, which is shown in the pictures to the right here. A dome is made of saplings covered with animal skin, cedar, or a tarp, sometimes in modern day. It's heated by stones placed in the center and water sprinkled on it, much like a sauna, to create steam. It's a confined space, as you can tell here by the size of the sweat lodge structure. So it's relatively confined. It's a small space, and participants huddle around. When you go into the sweat lodge, or whilst you're in there, you end up removing your clothing, and you're naked while you're in the sweat lodge. It's intense heat, very, very strong steam, and it causes you to sweat. It's meant to cleanse the physical and spiritual body, and this is done through that sweating. And from a spiritual standpoint, prayers and a sacred pipe are also shared at most or at some sweat lodge ceremonies. In terms of different milestones that are reached, the vision quest is one of the milestones. So a vision quest is a rite of passage into adulthood. Seekers must be purified. It involves a confession stated at a sweat lodge. Shamans, again, are direct seekers to go somewhere far away from the location, from the camp, or from where they're living at that time, or where the vision quest is starting. Youth will pray, fast, and endure nature for days. And the whole idea behind this is it's done in hopes of a vision from a guardian spirit. Shamans help interpret these visions. So when the youth come back with these visions, the shamans help, they facilitate the interpretation behind the visions. Now, I wanted to take some time, and what I'll do actually is I'll attach a video clip in the next slide, and I wanted to show some more information here briefly about some of the ceremonies that were just talked about.